We're all familiar with the three whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. My guest is international keynote speaker and renowned business coach, Louie Sharp. And we are going to be discussing how you can help motivate your kids, maybe even those teens. Louie, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you coming in. You had a long drive from Illinois. How was that this morning?
Not bad, not bad.
Well, that's good. And the weather is behaving a little bit better, so that makes it nicer.
It is. That's right. Yes, it is.
So before we get into some of these tools that I'm looking for you to share with parents, you have an amazing story of how you came out of an abusive childhood, military career, and then started businesses, and now just have become this really well-known business coach. Share your story with us.
Sure. So I think it starts really when I was in the second grade. My mom and dad got divorced. At that point, we were living in Tucson, Arizona, and my dad had to move back to Chicago. That's where I was born, was in Chicago. And when my mom and dad were divorced, my mom got custody of us because it was the 60s. And so it didn't go well after that. Mm-hmm. My mom hired a babysitter to kind of watch over us, and the babysitter, I'm the oldest of three boys, so the babysitter had control over the household. And at one point when my mom first hired her, I went out to the yard and cut a branch off of a tree and then trimmed all the little branches off of it. And my mom handed that stick to the babysitter and said, if he gets out of line, you beat him with this stick. And I was responsible at this point of getting both my younger brothers up every morning, ready for school, coming home, cleaning the house, mm-hmm. making dinner, all those things. I was really running the house.
You're parenting.
Yeah, exactly. In the second grade. And then, so the babysitter not only beat me with that stick, but she sexually abused myself and my next youngest brother. Mm. And that went on for about 2 years. And then my dad saved his money. He got his 2-week visit with us and flew us to Chicago. When we got there, he asked us, do we want to go back? And all of us were no. Mm-hmm. And so he'd saved his money and hired an attorney. And they put me on the witness stand, and now I'm a ripe old fourth grader, right? And so they put me on the witness stand, and my mother at the time was having sex with all these different men. And it wasn't uncommon for me to be woken up in the middle of the night, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, to either loud, violent fights or loud, violent sex that my mother was having with just, again, a string of men. And so they put me on the witness stand, and I'm in the fourth grade. I don't know to lie, so mm-hmm. I just tell them the conditions we're living in. After I testify, the judge takes a recess, and we go out in the hallway. And I remember, Christine, like it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. I'm standing there next to my dad. On the other side of him is my stepmother, who he's married since this whole thing happened, obviously. And then my 2 younger brothers on my left. My mother comes out of the courtroom with her attorney, walks by, and never acknowledges that we're there. It's the last time I ever saw her live. She walked out and never came back. And my brothers and I thought, well, this is great, right? But little did we know we jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. Our stepmother was literally certifiably nuts. At a couple different times, she was strapped to a stretcher and taken to mental institutions, and she would beat us bloody. And she would line us up and ask us, why we did something. And you're 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. You just do stuff as a kid, right? You don't think about it. You don't think about the consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As example, one day we were playing handball with a dirty, muddy tennis ball off the white garage door. And she came home from shopping, and she lined us all up and said, why'd you do it? And we'd say, I don't know. And she'd say, I don't know is not an answer. And she'd work herself up into a frenzy until she had to beat somebody, and there the three of us stood. And so that went on until probably my junior year of high school. I didn't get a growth spurt till after I got out of high school. And so when I graduated from high school, I was not 5 feet tall, and I didn't weigh 100 pounds.
Oh, gosh.
So I still couldn't fight her off physically.
Yeah.
And I remember she would beat me and tell me that I was useless and never going to amount to anything, and that she couldn't wait till I turned 17 to sign the papers for me to join the military. And I would agree with her.
Yeah.
And so I turned 17 and I joined the Marines and never looked back, really. The Marine Corps, I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. I did some active duty time and some reserve time, but I never looked back.
Yeah. And military, from what you have shared with me, really saved you and taught you a lot of valuable tools. And you had, a great and exciting career in the military. Share with us a little bit about that.
Sure. I can remember the day that I was sent out to do a task, and I accomplished it. And in that moment, I realized, holy cow, I'm not who my mother said I was. And I actually rose up to the highest level in the Marine Corps and guarded American embassies, which is one of the most difficult things to do because of all the things you have to go through, the tests and the training and the interviews, because you guard American embassies literally around the world and have access to all these top secret documents and that kind of stuff. So I rose to that rank, and then I did 20 years altogether, and 14 months for Desert Storm, a bunch of other exercises and stuff like that. And I'm grateful, oddly enough, at the end of the day, that I got to survive it. I have some of the best men I ever knew weren't as lucky as I was.
And so after you left the military, your life didn't stop there. You kept pushing and pursuing and worked for companies and worked your way up, started, businesses. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Sure. So I did 4.5 years of active duty, and then I got off of active duty and I went into the reserve program. And when I got off of active duty, I went into a apprentice program in a body shop. And I was there for probably about 2 years. And the business owner had a meeting and said, I want to make $50,000 more for me this year, but I can't afford to give anybody a raise. I stood, yeah.
Thanks,
not
sir.
much incentive.
Yes.
And so I stood up and told him, I'm done, I need my paycheck. Everybody else was like, what are you doing? I said, did you hear what he just said? He just told us loud and clear, he wants us to work harder for him with no reward for us. I'm not in. And so at that point, I started my first company at 23. I had $500 and a toolbox, and I rented a 1-car garage with no heat and no running water, and I started Sharp Auto Body. And we're in April, May of this year, Sharp Auto Body will be 41 years old.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh. And I started and bought companies since then, but we're capable of a lot more than we probably think.
Yeah, and I love the title of your coaching company, The Gifted Leader. And what I think is so profound, where you came from this place of not feeling gifted at all. You hadn't had anybody pouring into you until you hit the military, and then you get a taste of that. And I just love that that's your passion now, is empowering people to be gifted leaders. So share with us, under the Gifted Leader, I am aware you do so much. You're involved with youth. You do talk to parents. You've been so helpful to me in my business and helping business owners. Can you touch on each of those pieces briefly for us?
Yeah, it's really simple. All of those come down to one core thing for me, whether they're teens or business owners or parents or everybody else in between. It's simple. I believe everybody's a gifted leader. When I do keynote presentations, one of the first things I'll ask the audience is, by a show of hands, who's a leader? And usually, depending on the group, right?
Yeah.
Usually there's somewhere between, I would say 50 to 70% would raise their hand. So I tell them all, you need to raise your hand because we're all leaders. Even if somebody's watching you pump gas at a gas station, you're a leader. You're setting an example for somebody. And then the next question I ask is, how many of you, by a show of hands, has had a positive impact on somebody else's life? And every hand in the room goes up.
Yeah.
Every hand goes up. That never fails. And so how can you not be a gifted leader? Right? And people have come to me, you're kind of arrogant. You think you're the gifted leader. I do.
Yeah.
But I know you are too. And so whether you're a parent or a teen, and you said, I love the phrase that you just used, pour into. I've really started to understand the power of pouring into somebody. And I've been blessed with many gifts, but one of them is to see things in people that they don't see themselves. And then I just tell them with clarity and truth that that's who they are. And it changes the game for them.
Absolutely. You know, working with, you know, the kids like I do on the daily basis, but I'm meeting them for the first time, and families have this expectation that they hired me to come in and change their home. And that's initially what I do, is pour into those kids and speak over them what I know they're capable of, even if I'm not seeing it. And that's the same thing that you do, and I know that you've done for me as well, is, you know, speak into me the potential that you see. I may not be doing yet, but it's there, and it is. It's a very, very powerful thing, and it's what you teach, and anybody, you know, can do it. I really want to dig into some of the tools that you brought to parents and teens. I had the privilege of seeing you speak. And what was really cool at the end of speaking to the teens, I remember this girl, and I saw her in the back, and I'm going, she is trying to work up her courage to come up front and talk to you. So it was really fun to watch it play out, and just seeing her like kind of scoot up to like another table and then talk to like one of her friends and then scoot over to like this friend. She's like weaving her way up to the front. And it was really cool to see her say, difficultly, it was like she was really stammering to get it out to you, it's that, you know, you were the best motivational speaker she had ever seen. And what I liked about what you did is you also had these very powerful, you know, visuals, which I wish we could get into today. And then also the power of, you know, your story of overcoming. I mean, those kids had to take a moment and say, well, my life isn't nearly as bad as Louie's. I can achieve things, I can do things. So it was really, really a powerful time to see you speak in that room. But going through what you shared that day, there's a couple that I really keyed in on that I want you to share with our parents and how they can implement these in our own home. And one of the greatest lines that I love it is, who you be, they will become. So share with what you talk about and what's behind that.
Sure, that you can't be somebody you're not, right? People try to be it, but at the end of the day, you're still being whoever you are at your core. And I can't be positive without that having an impact on you. I can't be negative or sad or angry without that having an impact on you. So regardless of who I'm being, I'm having an impact on you. Whether I'm aware of it or not, doesn't matter. It's happening. And when we think about children, I like to think of children as sponges, right? They literally come out. I believe that all of us come out as a blank sheet. And we come out believing that we can do anything. And we're not afraid of anything. We only come into this world afraid of two things: loud noises and heights, right? Because back in caveman days, we had to know to run from the saber-toothed tiger when it roared, and we had to know that when we walked to the edge of the cliff, even though you and I couldn't communicate, we both had to know that if we went off the edge of the cliff, nothing good's about to happen. But we don't come in afraid of snakes. We don't come in afraid of public speaking. We don't come in afraid of spiders. We don't come in afraid of anything. That's all taught into us, and somebody starts writing on that blank sheet. So who you're being is really absorbed by these little minds and bodies and spirits, because that's who you're being, and that's the only thing that's around them for them to absorb. And everything that you do, they take in.
Absolutely. And I think we don't, as parents, we really don't see that, because we're so busy with life. We really don't sit and just take a moment that's who they're exposed to. That's where they're learning everything from, is us. I mean, and we do and we don't, right? We're like, oh, they're just like me. I can see all those traits when they're good, but when they're those negative traits, well, obviously that's got to be somebody else. And not that there isn't, but.
Right, and how can you yell at your spouse and then be surprised when your kids are yelling?
Absolutely.
How can you be a drinker and then be surprised when your kids are out drinking or doing drugs, right? Who you're being, whether that's positive or negative, is impacting them. And that's what they're literally almost like absorbing into their pores, literally.
So you're saying that when we just tell them not to do it, even though we are, that doesn't hold water? That long, do as I say, not as I do? What? That doesn't work?
I'm going to use a word I might not be able to spell, but that's very hypocritical, isn't it?
Absolutely,
and this is what, when I mentor young teenage girls, one of the things I tell them is when they meet a boy, get them in front of dogs and little kids. Because little kids know BS, right? And so that little child, regardless of their age, that little child knows that if you're telling them, no, don't drink alcohol, but they watch you drink alcohol and get drunk and fall down, they know the truth. You don't have to tell them. And so stop kidding yourself that you can tell them one thing and do something else, because little kids know the truth.
Yeah.
Much like this is what I tell people that want to speak, just like an audience. An audience knows if a speaker's the real deal or not really quick. So do kids and dogs.
Absolutely. So we're going to go on to another one. We could sit here for a while, but we will move on. Talk about, and we, as public speakers, we learn a lot about this. We often feel that just what's coming out of our mouths, just the words are all that matters, but there's so much more to it. There's the nonverbal cues that we're getting, it's our volume, and you talk to parents about that. There's some percentages in there, and I can't remember what they were exactly, but there's more going on than just the words coming out of our mouth that are going to influence our kids.
Yeah, and that percentage is 55%. 55% of what we communicate is through body language. And so it's very powerful what we do with our body. One of the things that a story I love to share is, I don't know how I knew this, Christine, but at some point, and it might have been intuitively, when I had grandchildren, I never ever spoke at them at any level other than right here. When they were crawling, I was on my stomach crawling. When they were at hands and knees, I was on my hands and knees at the height they were at. I never ever spoke down to my grandchildren. Never. I was always at the same level. And to this day, and it's a joke, I'm really proud, my oldest granddaughter is getting married in August, and she's actually asked me to officiate the wedding.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's very exciting.
I need to add that to the next intro too, is
sure.
Also, we'll officiate your wedding.
But I can tell you that I was the grandpa that did a lot of things for them. I was divorced, and even in the summer, I would get my granddaughters for a week. And so they had to tell me one thing that they wanted to do that they'd never done before. So I was the grandpa that built a lemonade stand with them. I was the grandpa that took them to the Shed Aquarium. I was the grandpa that taught them to water ski. I was the grandpa that took them zip lining. But I never raised my voice to them except once. And I took them canoeing for the first time. And so they're little, and I'm at the back of the canoe, and Josie's in the middle. And there's no banks. There's like weeds and reeds and that kind of stuff. So I'd already realized that if this canoe tips, I've got no way to I can't get it to the bank and turn it over by myself. I'd have to do that in the middle of the stream. And I've been there, and that's not an easy thing to do. And I would have two young girls in life vests drifting away from me as I'm trying to, so I'm aware that if this thing goes over, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
And so Josie stood up because she was scared of a spider, right? She saw a spider in the canoe and she jumped up. And that's the only time I've ever raised my voice to them. And to this day, it's a joke because they realize and remember that one day, because it wasn't a common occurrence. And my point to this is that my level of communication with them and my impact, I've always been their favorite grandpa, and there's been marriages and divorces, and they got like 7 or 8 grandpas to choose from. Seriously, I'm their favorite grandpa. And my greatest honor in my entire life, my greatest accomplishment is being asked to be her officiant, to marry her, right? But I think that that's the power of that lifetime of communication at the same level physically, and at the same level volume-wise.
Absolutely. And that, I tell parents too, nobody takes in information well when they're feeling lorded over. When somebody's standing over them and, and has that, because now you're in defensive mode. So you're more concerned about defending yourself than really taking in what's being said. So that is such a powerful lesson.
And it applies in every area, in every relationship, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Not just raising children, but with employees, with people that you love, your family and friends. It's never good to be talking down to somebody.
No.
And I mean literally talking down to them.
That physical posture.
Yeah.
You can do it with your words, you can also do it with your body. The other, and this is so simple, and I love it, and I use it now too when I've had the opportunity to coach some teens, and it's so basic, but it's E plus R equals O. And I love it, so please share the what that's all about.
Sure. So it's event plus the response equals the outcome. And I gave some examples the day you saw me speak. I like to give people examples. If I give you $1,000 and you go out and drinking and buy dinner for all your friends tonight, you wake up tomorrow, you're hungover and the $1,000 is gone. I give you $1,000, you call your investment person up and say, hey, I'd like to invest $1,000. You wake up tomorrow, your net worth went up $1,000. The event was exactly the same. Your response to that event changed the outcome. And it's really that simple. And what the most powerful thing in that equation, E plus R equals O, is the plus, right? If I say something to you and you don't like it, you have the ability to take a breath and then go back and decide, who do you want to be in that moment? Now, what I like to share with people is, you have to decide before the proverbial stuff hits the fan, who do you want to be, right?
Yes.
So if you tell me, Louie, I really think bald men are funny looking and stupid and unattractive, now I could go into that place and I could instantly think back, and my mother was right, or my stepmother was right, I'm never going to amount to anything, I'm not attractive. Now my response is going to actually be a reaction, not a response. I'm going to react in that moment, and then we're going to get confrontational, right? Nobody ever wins in that kind of stuff. So when you say that, before I get to that point, I have to decide who I want to be. And for me, it's love and kindness. And so when you tell me bald men are funny looking or bald men are stupid, I can take one breath, and that's all. Just one breath breaks the chain of thought. I take one breath and ask, Louie, who do you want to be? I want to be love and kindness. Christine, thank you. I appreciate your feedback and your point of view.
And now, can we please make it clear to the audience, I have never said that. I believe you're a delightful person and kind.
Sure, I'll be
nice
happy.
Looking man. This is, I don't want to be getting emails now from everybody, every bald man on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. No, you've never said that, but you see my point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's very powerful because we have the ability to change the outcome of everything by how we respond to it. And literally in every opportunity, we have choice. And we have choice to be either positive or negative. And it's really that simple.
Well, and think of the example, again, going back to that, who we be, they become. What an example for your kids when they trigger you. I mean, kids know how to push our buttons. And you take that pause and ask, simple, who am I going to be?
Right.
Take a moment. And then there's so many tools that you can learn in that moment. Is sometimes parents feel like I have to say something, I have to fix it in that moment. And sometimes the best response is, I'm going to take a break and think about this, kiddo. I'm going to come back to you in a little bit. Like, that is a good response. And then that outcome is going to be so much better. it's also, and I love that you brought this up, is that, that R can be reactionary, and that's not going to be good.
Right.
We need to take a moment and make sure, are we responding or are we reacting?
Give me some of that. And we are response able. We are responsible for who we be in that moment, regardless of what's been triggered of, and especially, and kids are a great example of this, right? Because they can be so trying. You could have had a long day. The kids won't stop yelling and screaming, but the kids are just being the kids, right?
Yep.
They don't know anything different, and they're just being who they're busy being. And you have the choice as a parent to be kind of, again, my stepmother would work herself up into a frenzy to where she had to literally beat somebody. And there was 3 innocent kids just kept saying, I don't know, and she would beat us. And that was her response to whatever was triggering her. And I got really clear on some of that, and we don't have time for it now. But you're absolutely right. With children especially, choose that response. And I love what you said. Sometimes even in the moment, after a long day or even a tough conversation with your spouse, and then your children are the icing on that cake, I love what you said, get away from it. Just separate, take a break, and get away from it, literally out of the room. And then again, ask yourself that one question: who do I want to be for my children? And you add children to the end of that, that becomes a very, very powerful question, right? Who do I want to be for my children?
Yeah, and our society is so instantaneous. We can get things quickly, we can find information quickly, and we get caught up into this, I have to answer quickly. And our kids need to learn to take a moment and think before they respond. But we're in this fast-paced world where everything is so easy and so clicky. And I love this because it is such a, who can't remember E plus R equals O? And just take a moment. And that remembering, taking a break is still a healthy response. It's not that you're not responding, it's that you're going to continue to respond better. So it's just so, I absolutely love it when I saw, I'm like, oh, I was using a lot of words to explain that, and now it's down to 3 letters. It's great. I love it. Well, we need to wrap up here. If we could go on, you're so easy to talk to, so much great information. But I know that you are a reader, and you've had some books that have really influenced your life. Really quickly, the #1 book that has been the powerful influencer in your life.
That's really easy. Jack Canfield, The Success Principles. But what I love to share with people is any problem that you're having in your life, somebody figured it out and wrote down the answer in a book. But you can read the book, but until you get off your butt and do something. I actually said this out loud in a podcast, and now I'm repeating it. Because the woman that was interviewing me said, my God, that was genius. And I thought, well, I just busy doing, like we're doing here, right? But nothing works until you do.
Absolutely.
So you can read any book you want, but until you get off the couch and go do something, nothing's going to change in your life.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you so much. This time has gone by so quickly. Thank you for tuning into The Parenting Game. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
We're all familiar with the 3 whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaut, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.